I make it 2 minutes past 5, so we will begin. And let me begin by thanking you all so much for coming and saying we are so excited for this event tonight. We can't wait to share with you the results of our Burundi longitudinal long-term impact evaluation. Now, almost exactly 1 year ago, I was in Burundi meeting some of our savings group members. And for those of you who are newer to Five Talents, let me tell you about just one of them so that you can get more of a sense of what we do. So meet Irene. This is Irene from Burundi. She lives in a remote rural village, and before she joined a Five Talents group with the Mothers Union, she was really struggling to make ends meet. But a friend invited her to join a group, so she decided she would take the plunge. She joined the group. She learned how to read and write and count, first of all. And then once she and her friends, most of the women had not been able to complete school when they were girls. So once they'd become literate and numerate, they started to save their money together in a box just like this one, week by week, all the while going through financial literacy, business skills, and other trainings offered by the Mothers Union. Five Talents always partners with a local partner, and in Burundi, that's the Mothers Union Burundi. So all the training was delivered by Mothers Union Burundi in the local languages. And once Irene and her friends had been through the training and saved enough money in that box, they decided to start making loans to one another. And first of all, Irene took a loan and she used it to invest in some mice. Now, you might wonder why mice is a business opportunity, but in parts of Burundi, people use them for meat where they can't afford any other forms of meat. So Irene was able to sell these mice for people to eat, and she made a good profit. And then with the profits, she decided to invest in some rabbits, and the rabbits bred as rabbits do, when she sold the rabbits for profit too, also for meat. And with the profits from that business, she invested in some chickens, and the chickens laid eggs as chickens do. And at that point, she began making profit from the eggs, but she also decided to diversify thanks to the business skills training she'd had from Mothers Union Burundi. So she bought some flour and some sugar as well, and along with the eggs, she started baking cakes and selling them by the roadside, as you can see in this picture here. And then finally, with the profits from all of these businesses, Irene was even able to buy a goat. Also, Irene used some of her profits to buy reading glasses. You can see in the last picture, she was wearing reading glasses, and she was able to pay for some of the costs of her children's wedding. Her children had grown up by then. Now, Irene's story really illustrates the changes, the impacts over time. She went from not being able to make ends meet, not being able to read and write, to selling mice, rabbits, chickens, cakes, even a goat, buying reading glasses, investing in her children's future. So Irene is just one example of how these impacts deepen over time. And those of you who do know Five Talents will know we have many, many stories just like Irene's from all over the world. But what we've never had before is objective impact data verified by a third-party independent consultant that can prove those impacts are in fact true across a whole cohort, a whole community of savings groups. And that's what we're bringing you tonight through this Burundi evaluation, and that's why we're so excited about it. So tonight, Hannah, who is the monitoring and evaluation lead from our programme team, will be sharing with you these results. And Maria, who is our programme team lead from Burundi, is also with us, so she'll be able to answer questions too. We owe both Hannah and Maria a massive debt of thanks. They've done a huge amount of work on this evaluation alongside the independent contractor. And we also owe a huge debt of thanks to Claudette, who is the Mothers Union Burundi coordinator from Burundi. It's fair to say that without Claudette, probably none of the impacts you're going to hear about tonight would have happened. She's been an inspirational, visionary leader right from the start of this programme, leading the Mothers Union Burundi to deliver massive and really, truly impactful programmes. So Claudette, we salute you. Just before I hand over to Hannah, let me share with you how this impact evaluation came to pass. It's actually one of the silver linings of the coronavirus pandemic. Back in May 2020, we as Five Talents were asking ourselves, how are savings groups coping during the pandemic? What does lockdown look like in all the different places where we work? Are savings groups sharing out all the money so that they can use it now, or are they keeping it knowing they're going to need it for loans for tomorrow? How are they keeping that money safe? How are they themselves being part of the solution? We knew that organised groups of women would be leading community responses, and we wanted to find out what was happening. So we asked all of our partners to survey a sample of their savings groups so we could find out what was going on. The big surprise came back from the Burundi team, who sent us data on over 800 savings groups. Now, at the time, we were supporting around about 140 savings groups. As many of you know, we fund these groups for around about 3 years as they go through the literacy training, the financial literacy, the business skills training, and then they graduate. So we don't fund them, we don't support them anymore, neither does the Mothers Union. So at that time in 2020, we were funding 140 savings groups, but we got data from over 800 groups. So we asked Claudette, where are all these savings groups? And she said, oh, we thought it would be interesting to go back to some of the historic groups that have graduated to see how they were coping during the pandemic too. So we said, wow, you're still in touch with all these groups. As soon as the pandemic is over, we have to do a long-term deep impact study to find out how impacts have changed over time for those groups. And that, therefore, is exactly what we did, and that is what we're sharing with you tonight. So let me now hand over to Hannah to share with you the top line results. I think Hannah's going to speak for around about 20 minutes, and then there'll be time for lots of questions at the end. So please do write your questions in the chat box as we go along. And also, can I encourage you to take pen and paper or your phone or wherever you take notes, and just write down as we go 2 or 3 statistics or impacts that really speak to you. You're going to hear a huge amount of impact. It can be quite overwhelming. So do just jot down the ones that really speak to you, and we'll come back to those at the end. Thank you so much, everyone. Hannah, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see so many of you with us. Thank you for joining. As Rachel says, my name's Hannah. I'm part of the programme team at 5 Talents. So today we're going to look at the Burundi, the evaluation that was recently done on the programme that 5 Talents supports in Burundi. So just to give you a kind of a brief idea of how this is going to be structured, we're going to briefly look together at some of the context of the programme in Burundi, both the history of the programme as well as a little bit about Burundi itself. And then we'll look at the report, thinking about what we were trying to learn through the report, but also spending a little bit more time on the findings and some of the key impacts. And then, as Rachel says, there'll be time for a Q&A at the end. So please do type your questions into the chat, and Megan will keep hold of them, and then we'll go through those at the end. And then there'll be a short time at the end for Chris, the co-CEO, to speak about what's next following this evaluation for 5 Talents. So first of all, for those who don't know, I thought I'd share a bit of context about Burundi. So Burundi is a very small country in East Africa. It ranks as one of the least socio-economically developed countries in the world. And in Burundi, women and children tend to be the most impacted by poverty. So women often have fewer opportunities to attend school, for example. So one of the things that this means for women is that often illiteracy rates are higher for them than they are for men. So 5 Talents partners with Mothers Union Burundi to deliver the programme. And Mothers Union Burundi's focus is on sustainable development and poverty reduction by promoting the participation of women in Burundian society. Some of you might recognise this lady. This is Claudette Kigemi, who Rachel was talking about at the start. She's the coordinator for Mothers Union Burundi. And she's an incredible leader who's led Mothers Union Burundi for over 2 decades. And as Rachel says, much of what we're going to discuss here really speaks to the impact that Mothers Union Burundi and Claudette have had through the work that they've been doing. So as I say, Mothers Union Burundi is a movement of incredible women focusing on advocating for the rights of women in Burundi. So a little bit of history about the programme. So before 5 Talents partnered with Mothers Union Burundi, in 2001, Mothers Union Burundi started a literacy and empowerment programme, which was started in response to the low literacy rates, particularly amongst women. But the programme didn't just focus purely on literacy and numeracy. Instead, it focused on helping communities to see and identify often unrecognised resources that they might have. So that could be physical resources, knowledge-based resources, experience-based resources and knowledge, relationships they might have with one another, and use and mobilise these to achieve social change. And this process is often pivotal as well in changing how people perceive themselves. Maybe a woman has never been to school and so sees herself as somebody who doesn't have much knowledge or understanding. And actually, instead, this programme was focused on identifying the things that people do have knowledge on and mobilising around those to try and achieve change in these communities. And this programme was hugely successful. And as a result, in 2010, Mothers Union Burundi identified that they wanted to add a savings group element to the programme to allow groups to improve their economic situations and build on the impacts from the literacy programme. So as a result of the literacy programme, people often identified, for example, that they wanted to improve their access to healthcare, and part of that might be advocating for their right to that, and part of that might also be being able to make the investments in that happen. So that's where the savings group element kind of became part of the vision that Mothers Union Burundi had. This picture here is one of the first saving groups in Matana Diocese back in 2011, so just after Five Talents partnered with Mothers Union. So the programme today, in many ways, encompasses some of that history. So all of the groups, even today, begin as literacy classes before they then start to save and loan together after around 1 year of literacy. So in this picture, this is a picture of a literacy class taking place. You can see a learner, who is the woman who's by the board. She's writing on the board in a table which combines vowels and consonants to make different sounds, which the group then put together to make words in the local language Kirundi. And then on the left of the board, you might be able to make out there's a tree, and this is a solution tree, as we call it. And the group has used this solution tree to think together, to organise their ideas around a challenge they have, and thinking about what they could do to try and change that. So what might be the things that they could do, the actions they could take, and what result that might be, or what that might result in. So this is just one example of how the literacy groups combine literacy learning and mobilising around social change. And then the lady on the right, who's kind of looking on, she's the facilitator of the group. So she's a volunteer from the same community as the learners, and she's been trained by Mothers Union Burundi, and she will support the group for 2 years. So starting from literacy through to them also becoming and being supported to run an effective savings group. So moving to the evaluation itself, so Rachel shared a little bit about kind of the context and kind of what almost provoked us to think it would be really interesting to look more at this. And one of the key aims that we wanted to, or one of the key kind of focuses of the evaluation, was to look at the longitudinal impacts, meaning the impacts within the groups over time. So the groups are supported by their facilitator for 2 years, but after that, they don't receive any further support, and they go on and they continue saving and loaning. And we wanted to learn more about what specifically happens beyond that period, so beyond the period that they're supported by the programme. And the evaluation was conducted by an independent consultant, and you can see a little bit here about the methodology. So it included focus groups, surveys, interviews, and then also looking at existing documentation of the programme. Just very briefly, to give you an idea of the number of people consulted in the evaluation, a survey was conducted to reach programme participants, and in total 570 participants were reached by the survey. And obviously one of the central aims was to look at the long-term impacts of the programme. And as you can see from this graph, the vast majority of the sample were participants who had joined the programme between 5 and 22 years ago. So again, this means that those groups have, for many, many years in some cases, been working without the support of their facilitator, and that's what we were most interested in, seeing the longitudinal impact of the work. So today we're going to give a short summary of the findings, but there really is so much in this report and so much to celebrate. So if you go to our website, you'll be able to access a summary of the report and also the full report, and we'll provide the links to these at the end of the presentation. So today we're going to look at 5 different impact areas. So the first impact area that we're going to look at is literacy and the impact on literacy rates. So through this programme, through the literacy part of the programme, more than 144,000 literacy learners have been accredited as literate. And what we mean by that is they've taken the government accredited literacy exam and passed. And that 78% of those people are women. So the programme has a particular focus on reaching women. Those 144,000 learners equate to about 2.9% of the adult literate population in Burundi. So this is obviously a huge and a remarkable achievement for the programme and a significant contribution to Burundi. So the evaluation found that becoming literate, and women in particular seeing that they had value and that they could affect change in their communities, led to an increase in self-confidence and also hope for their future. Specifically, the evaluation found that spiritual transformation, so when people saw themselves as loved by God and made in God's image, that was often a precursor to having almost a vision and a belief and a hope in wider change in their community. So this quote from the Bishop of Gitega Diocese in Burundi demonstrates some of the impact of the literacy programme. So he said, the programme does not only get people literate, but the participatory approach gives power to the people to discuss the issues relevant to them and to come up with solutions to address them. So one example of what the bishop means can be seen in gender-based violence. So the evaluation found that 98% of participants advocated against gender-based violence as a result of their involvement in the programme. And the evaluator attributed this to the discussions which took place in the literacy classes using the discussion tool. So the solution tree we saw earlier is one example, but there are many others. And also the participants' increased confidence and their drive to change their society. And this change was not confined to gender-based violence. So this graph here shows the difference in members sending girls to school in 2006 compared to 2022 on the right. In 2006, just 62% of women reported sending their female children to school, compared to 91% in 2022. So obviously that's a significant increase. In 2006, the programme was focused on literacy and empowerment, but hadn't yet integrated the savings group element. That didn't come until 2010. And the evaluation notes that since 2006, the participants have the means to act on their desire to provide an education for girls through access to loans and increased incomes. So participants' increased inclusion and participation in society began during the literacy groups and then was sustained and enhanced through their membership in the savings groups. The evaluation found that these different elements of the programme worked together, they complemented each other, and helped to achieve the impacts reported by so many. The literacy groups, and especially the discussions around social change, led to a desire to invest in positive changes. And then the savings group element via the 5 Talents Partnership gave the groups a platform for them to make those investments. So the second impact is about the growth of the programme and also the sustainability of the groups. So we were able to go back and survey groups that were started more than 10 years ago. So on this graph, each bar represents the groups that were started in a particular year, as indicated on the bottom. The percentage in blue shows those that are still meeting and active, and the purple shows groups which are inactive. So overall, across the whole sample, 84% of savings groups we found to be still actively saving and loaning. And as you can see, there is a small drop-off over time, but this is minimal. So what we can see from this is that the vast majority of groups continue to meet well after the 2 years of support. And the evaluator found that the reason for this was that the groups formed really strong relationships as a result of meeting together regularly. They were self-selected, they chose who joined the group. They're self-governing, so they make their own decisions about how they're run and what's important to them. And they build social cohesion through the non-financial activities that they do as a group as well. One of the things that we found was that the programme had grown a lot faster than we expected, as many of the facilitators who were volunteers felt motivated to form new groups in addition to the one that they were expected to support. So when a facilitator is trained, they're given a small incentive, and the expectation is that they will go and form one group. However, this pie chart shows that actually many of the facilitators went and formed many more groups than this. So this pie chart shows the number of groups that facilitators have supported. So you can see in the light purple section in the top right, 12% of facilitators kind of did what we expected and they started one group. But 88% of facilitators have formed more than one savings group, and nearly a quarter went on to form 6 or more groups. So obviously this has had a huge impact on the number of groups that the programme has kind of been able to almost indirectly support. And we think this is kind of speaks to the passion that the facilitators have for the programme, and also how much this programme and the facilitators are valued by communities. So the third impact we're going to look at is economic empowerment. So this graph here shows the percentage of participants reporting a significant improvement in their incomes from their businesses. As you can see, in 2013 on the left, just after the partnership with 5 Talents and therefore the savings groups began, this was quite low. Very few people felt that they were seeing an improvement in their ability to earn an income from their business. But now on the right, in 2022, as it was, over 85% of women and men reported that there has been a significant improvement in this. And you can see that the change is especially significant for women. In focus group discussions, the participants shared that the resource mobilization training, so what I was talking about earlier, helping people identify the potential and the resources that they have, and also using the group as a space to learn, had really benefited people and their businesses. And this, in combination with the literacy and the numeracy training, has resulted in participants starting new businesses or expanding existing businesses. And the evaluation found that members have become more entrepreneurial and more able to identify new business opportunities. I apologise, there's quite a lot of graphs in this presentation, but I hope that I'm trying to convey as much information as we can in a short time. So prior to the programme, the majority of participants were involved in subsistence farming. So what we mean by that is people were farming for their own family's consumption rather than farming to sell it to the market. Through the loans borrowed from the groups and from their increased confidence, participants often invested in growing their agricultural businesses. So, for example, people said that they bought livestock, or sometimes, more significantly, they might have purchased land. And this graph shows the percentage of female on the left and male participants on the right who employ others in their business. And you can see that nearly all have at least one employee now. And 35% of women and 48% of men were saying that they employ more than 2 people in their business. So what we can see from this is that participants move from being subsistence farmers to actually themselves becoming employers. And this speaks to the growth of businesses and also employment opportunities for those beyond the direct programme participants. As I said earlier, Burundi is a small country and land is scarce and the population density is very high. So the purchase of land is very expensive, but it's a significant and an important investment for families because so many people are involved in agribusiness. So this graph here shows the percentage of participants who reported an increase in their ability to buy land by the length of time that they've been a member of the group. So what we can see from this is that the longer a person has been a member of a group, the greater their ability is to make this significant investment in the purchase of land. So we can see that 62% of participants who joined 13 to 22 years ago, compared to 34% who joined 1 to 5 years ago, have been able to buy land as a result of their participation in the programme. So what we can see here is that members are able to accumulate a greater number of valuable assets over time, which obviously strengthens their financial resilience. And the savings groups provide a sustainable platform for people to continue investing in their businesses, even after that 2 years of support from the facilitator and Mothers Union Burundi ends. So the fourth impact is holistic empowerment. So we've seen that there are some amazing impacts around business growth and economic impacts. But then the question is, well, what does this mean for families? So this graph shows the percentage of participants reporting improvements across different areas. So as you can see, there has been a significant improvement in all of these household outcomes. So we can see that as a result of increased incomes, families now benefit from improved housing, access to healthcare, their children benefit from access to higher education. And as we saw earlier, this is particularly true for girls. We can also see that families feel more resilient, so more able to cope in a time of crisis or when something unexpected happens. This is partly due to the financial education, giving them a greater sense of resilience and preparedness, but also in some cases people had purchased assets which they said they would be able to sell in the event of a crisis, which provided them with kind of like a buffer. And the fifth impact is about the empowerment of women, and specifically thinking about their influence over decision making. So the evaluation found that as well as literacy and numeracy skills, participants, and especially women, became more confident and assured of their rights and their ability to advocate for them. And in turn, this led to them taking action on key issues. And one of the key areas of change was gender equality. So the evaluation found that as a result of their growing confidence, women were more likely to take on leadership positions. So this was within the church, also outside in perhaps elected leadership positions in their community. And this increased their decision-making power. So how they felt more able to influence decisions that took place in the household or in the wider community. And women reported that they felt on an equal footing with men in both business and public leadership. So as I said, the evaluation found that 49% of women became church leaders and 53% stood for an elected leadership position in their community as a result of the programme. Women also saw that they can be drivers of change in their communities and see themselves and their advocacy as key for securing their rights. So they have become agents of their own change. And importantly, this change was not isolated to women. So there are also male participants in the programme. And as I mentioned earlier, 98% of both female and male participants reported advocating against gender-based violence. So hopefully that's given you a brief summary of some of the amazing findings of the evaluation. And now I'm going to hand back over to Megan, who is going to lead us through the Q&A.
And big thanks as well to Maria, Rachel, and to Hannah for answering all our questions there. We are really, really delighted with the results of this research. It is so encouraging for Five Talents, and we know it's really encouraging as well for our close friends and partners at the Mothers Union to hear of the transformations that these programs have been achieving in Burundi over these many, many years. Transformations in terms of literacy, people learning to read and write and count. We know that's a lifelong dream for people. Also the ability to save and to borrow money and to start businesses and to employ people and to put children in school and clothes on their backs and to buy nutritious food and build homes, and all of the transformations in terms of transformations within marriages and communities. It really, really is quite exceptional for us to hear this research. So we're really, really encouraged by it. And it's even more encouraging to hear that groups are replicating over and over and over as there is organic replication. So we hope that you are encouraged as well as you invest your time and your talents and your treasure into Five Talents and into the work of our program partners. Be encouraged that it really is making such a difference to people's lives in East and Central Africa. As we've explained tonight, this research is all about the program in Burundi, but we know these impacts are evident in other programs as well. We're also delighted with the attention that the report has secured for us, the wider interest that there's been in the report. We were able to launch it in the Church Times, which was really brilliant for our profile as Five Talents. There were a number of other online articles as well. And there was even a question in the House of Commons. It was great to hear the research referenced in the House of Commons during one of the question sessions there as well. So in terms of next steps, you may or may not be aware that our strategic growth vision is to double the number of new members entering our programs each year. So between now and 2027, we want to grow the number of new members entering our partners programs from 10,000 a year to 20,000 a year, which is a really, really big vision for Five Talents. But because we know that these programs are making such a difference, we're really fueled in the pursuit of that vision. In order to do that, we effectively need to raise more money and send more money to programs in East and Central Africa so that our program partners can do the brilliant work that they are doing. And our own program team are hard at work as well, building relationships and continuing to invest in programs to see the kind of outcomes that we've seen in Burundi. And this is where you come in. There is a very specific request that we have for you tonight. Rachel said at the beginning, please do jot down 2 or 3 statistics that jump out to you. She did that with specific intent in mind, because we wanted to ask you to share the information that you've heard tonight, to share the outcomes that you've heard tonight with people in your network, maybe your friends or family members or colleagues or others that you're connected to, perhaps within your local church. Share the information of the impact that 5 Talents and our program partners are having in East and Central Africa. Maybe that's through conversations or over dinner. Perhaps it's something that you can do online. We're posting social media posts all the time. Please do comment on those social media posts or share them onwards. We would love you to help us reach new people. We know that in order to fulfill our strategic growth vision, we're going to have to continue to keep you, some of our wonderful, wonderful supporters, engaged in the work that we're doing. But we also know that we're going to have to grow our own networks as well. And the best way that that happens is when our wonderful supporters introduce us to their friends, and they get to know about the work that we're doing, and they also become involved in supporting as well. So please do share on what you've heard tonight. If there's anything that we can do to resource or help you with that, please do reach out to us. We're very, very committed to making that easy for you as well. So drop us a line or give us a call. Do get in touch with us. I wanted to finish up by sharing a quote, because if you have the opportunity to click onto our website and you have the inclination to have a look at the 100-page report, I know that won't be for everyone, you'll see that that report, in addition to being full of statistics, is full of wonderful quotes as well from people who were surveyed as part of the research. And here's what one member had to say. She said, "The program is life-changing. It gives you a new lease of life. We've learned to read and write, so it's opened our eyes. We can read the Bible and give glory to God. We make money and can feed and clothe ourselves and our children. We've bought land and we've built our homes. We women have become the light of our families." I thought that was such a wonderful quote for us to finish on tonight. Let me finish by saying once again, a huge thank you to you for the way that you support 5 Talents. None of this would be possible without your support, and we are so, so grateful for you and all the encouragement and the affirmation and the support that you do give to 5 Talents. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a really good evening.